Hey guys, today we're going to talk about our good friend, the overhead squats, and how we can mobilize for them and some tips to get better at them. So we have our demo girl Victoria going to help us out today. So we're going to talk about what ankles have play in the overhead squat. And the better we get with ankle flexibility, the better our overhead squat's gonna be for us. And like we were saying, it's the most athletic type of overhead squat, so we want to make sure we're kind of well-rounded in our overhead squat. So Victoria is going to use that tension of the band. She's just going to kick that foot forward as far as she can, and she'll just, probably about 20 or 30, she's just going to push that knee forward, feel that stretch in that Achilles area, and out to the side, the outside of the toes. We don't want to encourage inward. So she'll do about 20 in and out, just straight forward, and just kind of rolling on the outside of that ankle, and just back in and out of it. Just like that. And she can even put her hand on her knee just to give her a little bit of load. Victoria has really good ankle mobility, so this is exactly what we want to look for and what we want our end goal to be. Perfect. So we always talk about the hips, and the hips are really important in the overhead squat. And we're always telling you guys knees out, knees out. If we can't get our knees out, we need to do some mobility exercises and drills to get those knees out. And this is a nice go-to one to use that tension and that pull of the band to help encourage those knees to come out in our squats. So Victoria will load her up. She's going to put the band on her hips. We don't want it on the lower back because that'll just pull and make you arch. So make sure it's on the hip bone there. And she'll strap one knee in, she'll bend down, load herself on one side, she'll hang on to the other band with the other hand, and she'll put that one right over. She'll waddle over to the wall. And we want to get our butt as close to the wall as possible, and our feet just like we're going to do in our overhead squat. So put your arms back behind you. If we can make our overhead squats look like this, perfect. So the feet are against the wall. You can play around with your feet position. I know for me, if I put my feet straight, I really feel it around that inside of the hip. Maybe on the outside. Wherever you guys are tightest, you'll feel it. And we want to get your heels as close to your butt as possible. So she can kind of hook her fingers in the back of her shoes and then pull those feet down lower, and you'll really feel it down there where we probably want to feel it. And then she can just rest her hands on her leg. You don't have to load down too much because it's already pulling, but that's perfect. We can hang out there for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and that'll be a perfect prepping drill for overhead squats. So last mobility piece, we're linking the shoulders for overhead squats. So on this drill, Victoria is going to use this as a fulcrum while she holds in her snatch grip the bar, and mimicking the grip in the overhead squat. So go ahead and grab the bar. She's going to place the foam roller high on her shoulder. She'll get in her snatch grip, and she's just going to keep that spine straight. She's going to lower her hips, and her head will teeter-totter through that mobility. So we're just looking on opening that shoulder and using these two angles to open up those shoulders. So about 20 of these is probably perfect. And you guys can set this up pre-overhead squats anytime we're doing overhead squats. So hand placement is just as important as our feet placement. And you can use these knurling marks as reference points and as a guideline as to where we're going to grip that bar and where we want to train our overhead squats with that grip. So Victoria is right on that second knurling mark before she even takes it overhead. And this is not black and white. Everyone's grip is going to be different just because of where our inefficiencies are. And that overhead position is just a different corner, different axis of rotation. So just like we can squat with any stance, depending on our mobility, we can really grip it anywhere we want, but we want to train the grip that we're going to train for our snatches. And so we want to just develop and reinforce that snatch grip. So Victoria is going to do her overhead squats in our snatch grip today. So now we're going upstream to Victoria's shoulders. We always say active shoulders, let's take a second to talk about active shoulders. So active shoulders, and if you see the best people at this sport, Olympic weightlifters, they don't have a neck when they hold that bar overhead. So we want to hide the neck, think shoulders to ears. That's bringing our shoulders active. So we want to rise and elevate the scapula and those shoulders to create stability. When we have stability, guys, when we're going through our movement, we have a better chance at generating torque. And so our reverse shrugs that we use in warm-ups is really our focus to warm up the shoulders, but to teach us what a disengaged shoulder is and what an engaged shoulder is. We can totally flip-flop it and handstand push-ups and, again, reverse shrugs, but in a different angle, so loading us in a different direction. So when we think active shoulders, think about blocking with those shoulders so that when we have something loading us, like a spring, we have a nice stable shoulder that can hold that weight overhead. And so Victoria will pick that bar up. She'll throw it overhead. And active shoulder, she does a really good job with this, with bringing all this stuff up right here. Do a couple overhead squats for me. Very good. And we can see that the arms are locked out. The shoulders are active. She's pushing up. She's going against that weight. That's why they call it resistance training. We're resisting against this load right here. So gravity works in one direction, guys. It goes straight down, and we want to go directly opposite of that direction. So we're going to go straight up. So now I'm talking about bar position. While we're doing our overhead squat, Victoria will put the bar overhead, and we want that bar to be right in the middle of her foot. If I were to draw a line, it should go straight down in the middle of her foot. That's where we know where we're balanced. So that bar position and where it's positioned through the squat's really important, again, with being stable. And this movement's all about control and balance. So hold the squat at the bottom of the squat. So even at the bottom, Victoria does a good job here. And even if we need to adjust, she's able to make those adjustments to have that bar centered. So go ahead and stand right back up. And that bar stays right overhead. And as she goes down into the squat, those arms will come slightly back. And that goes against to being stable and keeping that bar balanced, because the shoulders come a little forward as she goes down into the squat. So she's able to kind of make those changes in that shoulder because of the change in the angle of her back. Good job. Come back up. And that sequencing, can you do a couple more? And that sequencing going into the squat, Victoria thinks about shooting those hips back slightly to kind of load the hips and avoid that forward momentum and that forward pull of that bar. And so that's really important too, going down into that squat, that we get our hips slightly back just to initiate that squat and then go down into that squat. And even still, those hips still travel backwards. So if we ever feel like we're tipping forward through the squat, it might be because of our sequencing. We might be tipping forward and might be bending at the knee first and all the weight going forward and then having to make that correction. So even at the top, we want to kind of pre-program ourselves to go hips back, the weight's a little bit more heavier on the heel, hips back, and then coming down. You can see that. You can see that with Victoria doing these squats. Versus going knees forward, it just doesn't really work that way. She has to fight that bar through that overhead squat. And you fight that bar, and it's gonna beat us every time with these overhead squats. Cool. So I hope that video helped us with our overhead squats and helped us understand the overhead squat a little better. Just always keep in mind, it's about balance. It's about being stable through the overhead squat. So a lot of times, especially in warm-ups, we want to, we live and die by that clock, so we want to do these movements very quickly. A lot of times that works against us. So take your time with it. Think about all those key points. Think about all these points of performances that helps us with this squat. And a lot of times you have to take a step back, slow down to give us a chance to think about all these things.